Submission in the biblical sense is about a happy and willing response to a husband's leadership or headship. Now, for a lot of us as young women who are in relationships, a lot of times we do struggle with that submission. Even if we believe that, okay, this person that we're in a relationship with is going to be our husband. And I've had the privilege, I guess, of seeing both sides. That is, being with a man who it was difficult for me to fully submit. A lot of times I had to force myself. And I'm now with someone else, and submission is a breeze. Like, it is the easiest thing. And I looked and I realized that perhaps now that I have the choice, or now that I still have the choice in terms of picking who I marry, I'm in a position to actually see if this is the kind of man that I can submit to, knowing that when I'm married, God has commanded and expects that me as a wife will submit to my husband. So young ladies out there, if you're in a relationship you think is leading to marriage, this is a good time to really consider whether this is the kind of man that will make submission essentially easier for you. From the relationship where I found submission difficult, there are two main things that, in hindsight, I see why submission was difficult. The first one is that the man didn't understand his role, nor did he have the maturity and the humility to grow in life into this role of leadership and headship according to God's way. Now, what people miss about submission in the biblical sense is that in order for it to flourish, it needs a biblical leadership. That is how God has ordained it. A biblical leadership from the man that understands that he is ultimately led by God himself. So if a man is following God and has a relationship with him, then of course he's going to know how to treat a woman. And therefore, I as a woman will not have a problem submitting to him because he's already following God's precepts of how to run a relationship in a godly way. Never underestimate the thought process that God put into these commands and structures that he's given us, especially around relationships. Biblical submission needs biblical headship to flourish. There are no two ways about it. Once that biblical leadership is missing, it will be incredibly difficult for a woman to live out that godly submissiveness to a man, to her husband. So while you've got the upper hand in still deciding, is this the kind of man that I'll marry? Check that out and see, could this be a reason why I'm struggling with this? Because if I'm going to submit to him, then, I need to be sure that he understands what it means to be a husband and that he has the maturity and the humility to keep working every day to grow into that role and under the grace that God has given him to operate in that role. Another insight that I got when I compared the two relationships that I mentioned earlier was that in the one that I found submission quite hard was because the man didn't take the lead. And just to qualify what I mean by lead, I'm not saying that, he would make decisions unilaterally without considering what I think or what I have to say, because that would automatically contradict the fact that when we are man and wife, according to the Bible in 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 7, we become co-heirs in the grace of life and we're to live in that understanding. But what I mean by leading, or him being a leader, is that he takes initiative. And how you know that the man takes initiative is that he's mostly the one to say, let's. Let's talk about this, babe. Let's consider this. Let's review how we'll do this. Let's see what we'll do with our finances. Can we see how we can make this better? Like, he takes that initiative. And it's not a domination thing. It's not a case of him wanting to be the boss by all means or establish his position as the head of the house. It has nothing to do with that. It's mainly to do with the fact that he understands that you are his partner and that he should be getting you involved in the issues that need to be solved. So as a woman, of course, I want to be part of the solution to any problems that arise, especially if we're thinking of a future together, whether it be about our finances, how we run our home, how we raise our kids and all that stuff. But at the same time, I would love it when a man just shows that initiative. Like, this is important. So it also shows a maturity and an interest and a sense of responsibility that he understands that he needs to be in the forefront, because then he can take his stand as a protector, provider, and a covering for his family. So it's ultimately showing that understanding if he's taking initiative. When the man doesn't lead, it's difficult. How am I supposed to follow a man who isn't leading? And chances are, if he's not leading, it's because he has no vision. Why will I put myself through that? And these are signs and things that you can see when you're dating someone. Because if they don't have it before marriage, there's no magic. It's not just going to automatically come once you put a ring around his finger. It's not going to work that way. So while you have the chance and you find that submitting to this man is difficult, consider what I'm saying here. Lastly though, I want to also say that we must remember that ultimately our submissiveness is first and foremost to Jesus Christ, because we also keep our individual relationship with God even when we're married. If it is a case though that your partner is leading you into sin, that is not the time to be submissive. It's not the time at all. The submissiveness to Jesus will then take precedence. I mean, it takes precedence all the time. But if a man, you and your husband are running the home and partnering together, his word might go. And you find that maybe there are times where none of you can conclude on which side to take or what route to take. You just say to him, look, I'll just have to trust you as the head to do what is right, because you already trust that he's being led by God. His own headship is God anyway, so you can relax on that. But when he's leading you into doing something that is clearly sinning against God, that's not the time to be submissive. So that could be another reason, really, why you're struggling with it, because clearly he's leading you to something that you keep getting convicted about. The Holy Spirit keeps flashing red lights to you about. So you want to be like, okay, maybe that's why I'm struggling with the whole submissiveness thing with this guy. So that was it from my experience. Obviously, there will be other situations in terms of where a woman is not mature enough to really understand and embrace what the Bible's teaching about submissiveness and being man and wife. So therefore, even if the man is being the best lead and head as he can be, as a woman, you may not even be in that position. But for this video, mainly, I'm talking to women who understand that this is something they need to be doing in their marriage, in their future marriage, and want to do it, but struggle with it simply because really the man that they're supposed to be submitting to isn't really up to par. Now with marriage, it's clearly different. I'm not talking to married women, because once you're already in marriage, you just kind of have to go with it, because at that point it's like God expects this of you regardless of the kind of person he is. You had the chance while you were dating to decide whether this is the kind of man that's worth submitting to, but when you're already in marriage, it's a whole other different ballgame. So if you find that you're struggling with this and you're married, it is always best to go for marriage counseling. I'm not qualified to comment on that. But I hope that this has shed some light for you ladies out there. The point is, you have the chance right now to even decide whether this is the kind of man that you want to be submitting to for the rest of your life. Is he going to help make submission easier? That is my take on why submission can be hard for godly women.